quite.
Okay. Hello everyone, welcome to RedShark Live. This is the second of our series of roughly fortnightly shows, and today, as usual, we're going to be talking about everything that's of interest to content creators. That's particularly anyone that works with moving images, everything from cinematographers to anyone that uses a camera, really. It's a deliberately vague definition because these days everything's changing in this field at an incredible pace. So anyway, today we're going to be talking about the two major announcements from Red cameras. There's the announcement from last night, absolute surprise. As usual, it came for us in the UK in the middle of the night almost, and it was an announcement that they've got a completely new lineup of cameras. Also, we're going to be talking about their hydrogen phone, which is certainly worth talking about. Anyway, I just want to start by thanking our sponsors, Matrox, brilliant company. If you think you're watching a good picture, it's almost entirely down to their Matrox Monarch HDX box. I call it a box. It's actually a very, very sophisticated encoding and streaming and recording device. It basically allows you to stream without using a computer, and it doesn't really need me to tell you why that's a good thing. So thanks again, Matrox, for supporting this. We had advertised we were going to be talking to them by Skype, but the Skype gods weren't smiling on us today, so we're going to reschedule that for next time. Anyway, I'm very pleased to welcome Simon Wyndham, who's RedShark's deputy editor. Hi, Simon.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. There's a lot to talk about, isn't there?
There is, yes. A lot is happening.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that just a bit later on, we're going to be talking about this, which is the Panasonic EVA1 with no hyphen.
Apparently.
Yeah. So fascinating camera. But first of all, let's just talk about the Red announcement, because last night we were all getting ready to go to bed, and we suddenly found that there was this major announcement from Red about a complete realignment of their cameras.
Yes, they certainly know how to spring a surprise on people, don't they?
Yeah. Well, this is the joy of them being based in California and us being near London, which is that we're 8 hours. We're 8 hours behind. That's right. No, we're 8 hours ahead.
8 hours ahead. Yeah.
So yeah. So their peak time for making announcements is actually like the end of our working day. We don't mind because it was a fascinating announcement. So basically, correct me if I've got this wrong. Basically, there is only going to be one brain, that is the body of the camera, and then the choice, what differentiates them, will be the sensor.
Yes.
So, and what are the sensors? There's the Monstro, the Helium,
yes.
and the Gemini.
The Gemini, yes, the new one, the latest.
The new one, which I think is the low light one,
yes,
isn't it?
Yes, so lower resolution.
5K, still easily enough for most people. Bigger pixels,
yeah,
hence better low light performance.
Yes, yes.
And then I suppose if there is a hierarchy, it's the next one up is the Helium, which is 8K. It's S35, isn't it?
Yeah, and then the Monster is obviously the flagship.
Yeah, which is the Vista Vision shaped. I think it's called the Monstro VV, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
And for decades I wondered what V meant until I realised it was Vista Vision.
Yes.
So you may think, oh, that's a bad thing. There aren't as many cameras to choose from, but it's actually an incredible rationalisation of the range.
It's a vast simplification, and yes, I mean, I have to admit that I used to be quite confused by the number of models that they had. Yes, I think this will help them in the long run to consolidate everything and make things a lot easier to do. I know some people are talking about the Raven and asking about that, whether that's going to be discontinued. But yeah, certainly in the long run, I think this is probably the best thing, one of the best things they could do.
Yeah. I'll come to that in just a sec. I just want to say to everyone, if you're watching this, please share it by whatever means, even if you phone your friends, but share it obviously via the conventional means, social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. That would be awesome if you could do that. So going back to the Red cameras, why have they done it? I mean, to me, it's an obvious thing if you want to cut your operating costs and at the same time as lowering your prices. Yes. I mean, as I say, it was quite complicated, and you know, we're tech people. I mean, if we find it complicated to follow, then you know, then there's probably going to be quite a lot of other people who found it difficult to differentiate between the different. Well, you know what? I think we've learned something about encryption, because I reckon you could use any Red camera product name from the past era as an uncrackable password.
Yes.
Because I don't think as an editor I've ever actually got them right. I write the name of a Red camera and I've got a capitalization wrong, or you called it a weapon when I should have called it an epic, or I've called it a dragon when I should have called it a monstro.
Yeah.
And it sounds trivial, but actually you know, magnify that across the entire buying population, and if you're hesitant about the differences between products, you'll be hesitant about. It's going to be a slight barrier to buying, isn't it?
Yes. I guess with cameras like the Raven, they were lower cost, and that sort of product opened things up for people on lower budgets. So I guess that the new focus and reduction in models is almost focusing their target market really as well. It's not just a simplification of the camera models.
But anyway, we'll see how that pans out. Really interesting announcement. And then the other thing, you know, I'm sorry we're focusing on Red, but this is you can almost treat this as a separate company, and I do believe it is a separate business unit. You know, who would have thought that a high-end cinema camera manufacturer would be making smartphones?
Yeah, I think only Jim Jennard, I think, is the is the phrase we could use here.
Well, he said the very same thing, didn't he? Because he said people said to him, "Who'd have thought somebody who made his millions making sunglasses would make a cinema camera?" So that's not really a valid argument, is it? But what I think is valid is that they obviously have a depth of technical expertise. They know a lot about imaging. They know a lot about processing. You don't design, you know, the first, if not one of the first, if not the first 4K cinema cameras without coming into contact with all sorts of people in adjacent industries.
Yeah. I mean, there's also the aspect that just like they did with the cinema cameras, they're coming into a phone market from scratch. They're not they have, although people have certain expectations, you know, that with the screen that's been talked about, they're not having to live off their past products. They're not having to sort of fulfill any particular expectation. They can do something completely new and wacky and whatever, and completely reinvent the whole thing if they want to.
So in other words, you know, if anyone can do it, they can. And you know, there's not just one sort of WTF moment about the holographic display with the actually designed by the company called Lear, very appropriately. There's the fact that it is the basis for a smartphone platform. Well, I shouldn't call it a smartphone. We should call it a mobile computing platform.
I guess, yes. It's
expandable.
Yeah. I guess that's probably correct. Yeah, I mean, I honestly I don't know what to expect from it.
No.
I mean, I've got a completely open mind. There's a lot of opinion on the internet, but I'm just interested to see what the final product is, and what they can do with it, and whether the holographic display is something that is genuinely, to coin a cliched phrase, game changing.
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean that's this information is going to keep leaking or flooding out, and it'll be more late nights for us editors. But bring it on. It's great to see people so enthused and so happy to discuss enthusiastically a completely new class of product, which is, I think it is.
Yes.
So just I could just mention one more time. Just share this if you're enjoying it. Share it if you're not enjoying it, but share it. Let's move on to this EVA1, and the reason we're talking about this is because Simon has been reviewing this for RedShark this week.
Yes.
We haven't finished it yet.
Not quite. No, I've still got some testing to do on it.
So, but what do you think? I mean, there's always things about a camera that you wish would be different. But what about the pictures? Yeah,
I mean, it's an interesting camera. I mean, Panasonic obviously would like to put a lot of association with Vericam. And that's what it's designed to match in with. You could the various picture modes and color spaces. It will match in with that that camera. The interesting thing is the 5.7K output, for example, in RAW.
Why they chose that?
Well, I mean, it's a native resolution of the sensor, I believe.
Yeah, and presumably by being 5.7K. When you downsample to 4K, you're easily accounting for the loss in resolution due to the debayering process. And
well, that's it. But I mean, you've also got the. I mean, if you're recording to a compatible recorder that can record that raw output.
Yeah.
For the price of the camera, that's an insane amount of quality that you can extract from it.
Yeah. So this ties in with what we were talking about in the last show, which is ProRes RAW, the new Apple format, which has been implemented first, we believe, by Atomos. So we'll be testing that as well, won't we?
Yes, we will. I mean, what this camera kind of encapsulates is how the different manufacturers are all having to up their game. So with the ProRes RAW, I can see all manufacturers wanting their cameras to be compatible with that and give a decent output, so that even if the onboard recording can't record in a RAW format, you can still get a RAW output from the camera to a recorder, which in previous years was completely unheard of.
Yes. Okay. Well, so we'll keep watching RedShark basically for that review.
Yeah.
But we were looking at some pictures earlier on, and they're pretty sharp, aren't they?
They are very sharp. The colour is very good.
Yeah. They're certainly sharp enough to show the deficiencies of the lens.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I mean that was one thing that stood out. Focus is incredibly important. Yeah. And I guess that this particular lens that I have on it is a DSLR lens. It's an EF lens. The camera has an EF mount, which is obviously quite versatile with the number of lenses that different manufacturers are coming out with now. But yeah, it certainly shows up the deficiencies in the camera operator's skills more than anything. But yeah, it is a very good picture, very highly detailed, and as I say, the colour, it's got a very deep colour to it. It's got a nice look, a nice feel to it. I think.
Okay. Competition in that space, but all the cameras I think are very credible, aren't they?
Oh yes, yeah. I mean, it's impossible I don't think it's possible to buy a bad camera now. We've got to a point now where anything you choose, you will be able to produce a very highly professional result on it. And it comes down to the differentiators seem to be the ergonomics, built-in ND filters, and the bells and whistles, I guess, that separate them. But sensor performance and recorded picture across all different manner of cameras is very, very good now.
Okay, well, it's great to have a choice, isn't it?
It certainly is.
So I just want to I mean, this is a live show, and the joy of a live show is that we can be completely flexible. And we were just, like an hour or so ago, we were watching the footage from this camera on my 4K computer monitor. It's great. Monitor by Philips. I think it's not a grading quality monitor, but it is very sharp and it's very bright, which ticks enough boxes for me. We were looking at the footage that we featured in RedShark. Was it over the weekend? I think it was on Sunday by Phil Holland.
Yeah.
And the story behind this is that Phil was, as you do, flying above New York with 3 red Monstro cameras. I think, don't know what the angle is. I think the total angle between the outer 2 was 120 degrees or something. And so he shot in a resolution of 12K by 8K. It's basically 3 8K pictures, which he then stitched together. Now, YouTube doesn't have a 12K by 8K format, strangely enough. Nor does anyone have enough bandwidth for that.
No.
So he downsampled it to a mere 8K, and we watched it. We watched the 8K stream because we've got fast broadband here. Watched the 8K stream, but my monitor is only 4K, so I'm not quite sure where the downscaling was done. Probably in the graphics card, do you think?
Probably, yes.
Yeah. And what we saw was absolutely astonishing. Not only the quality of the 4K image downsampled from 8K, which was better than any 8K image, any 4K image I've ever seen. So let that sink in. This was actually, we were watching in 4K, but this footage was better than even the best 4K footage I've ever seen, because I believe it was downsampled from 8K, ultimately 12K. And I spoke to Phil Holland about this, and he said the reason for well, at least one reason, and obviously a very important reason for that, is because when you shoot at 8K or 12K, you're capturing details which would be missed if you shot at 4K, a mere 4K. So the end result is that slightly surprising, slightly counterintuitive, that you will see more detail at 4K than you would have done if it was shot at 4K. And we did a couple of tests, didn't we?
Yeah.
So we couldn't compare 8K with 4K, so we compared extremely good, probably the best 4K you'll ever see, with HD.
HD, yes.
And
From a high definition viewing distance, which is around 3 screen heights.
So you tell me what happened, because I sat close to the screen. But
yeah, so I mean, I was viewing it from the recommended HD viewing distance, just to see whether it would make a difference.
Which was what,
about roughly 3 screen heights.
Yeah.
And my eyesight isn't, it's not 20/20. I don't wear glasses, but it's not the best eyesight in the world. And you switched it to HD, and there was an immediately visible difference. The picture it was noticeably less defined, less sharp. It didn't have, I believe what you later referred to as dimensionality. It was when you switch to the back to the 8K stream output to 4K, it was, the sharpness just came in. It was very noticeable.
Sharpness and 3D.
Yeah,
3D-ness.
Yes, yeah, it looked real. I mean, when high definition 1080 first came out, there's a lot of talk about it's like looking through a window, and I guess compared with standard definition, it was. But this really was. It's a point where your eyes are able to define the detail you're seeing, rather than
yeah, that's right. You kept moving closer and closer, and of course this was 4K, not 8K, and it was 4K after YouTube compression.
Yes, yeah, and it was so clean.
So just imagine what 8K is going to look like out of the camera, direct out of the camera on an 8K screen. It's going to look unbelievably good. And I think the reason we're talking about this is because so many people, I have to say, back in the day when RedShark started, so many people who had never seen 4K said that 4K was pointless because you won't be able to tell the difference from a normal viewing distance.
Yeah, I mean, and again, actually, the same arguments were made between 720p and 1080 back when high definition.
And guess what? It's the same
in.
Arguments again with 4K versus
it's exactly 8K. The same. And I think what we're going to see is that as people become used to watching 4K, and in the future, if 8K catches on, which no doubt I've no doubt that it will, people get used to the normal. So when they start seeing the older footage, then they'll start seeing the deficiencies, and it'll be a case of, well, how were we ever satisfied with that? Why were we saying you couldn't get better than that? For me today, the difference was just clearly obvious.
Well, to put it technically, it's chalk and cheese.
It was.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. Okay, look, we've got some questions rolling in. I'm going to whiz through these things. Okay, we've got some really interesting questions. There isn't time to spend time on all of them, but I'll just whiz through them. First one, and this again, folks, it's live. It's great. Still time if you want to send some more questions in. We'll just extend it by a few minutes, but I think we will probably have to call it a day then. But okay, so first question is, if Red's smartphone gets popular, do you think it will encourage big phone companies like Samsung and Huawei to move in this direction? Personally, I'm not sure what that direction is. Because it's such an extraordinary, unique position that Red are in. Are we saying that they would have to move into the direction of making a Red helium compatible camera? I certainly think it will open people's eyes in the sense that they'll start thinking about, should we be making a modular mobile computing platform? And then we're going to go perhaps through a decade of incompatible mobile computing platforms. That's a joy, isn't it? Yeah, that's all I can say on that, really. What is the Red DSMC2 announcement? DSMC2, by the way, stands for Digital Still and Movie Camera, second generation. What does this announcement mean for Raven? It wasn't mentioned, which I think is probably not great news for Raven. I think if you were going to buy a Raven, you should just keep saving, and you will be able to buy a much better camera than you would have been before this announcement. I think if the core of this announcement was that Red wants to reduce its manufacturing and marketing and support costs to be able to make cameras more cheaply, then essentially, if they've only got one model, which is the DSMC2 with 3 variants now, but still essentially the same block of electronics, to keep manufacturing the Raven means that would double their model range. And I don't think that would be justifiable.
No, it would be pointless.
It would be pointless. So yeah, often I think you get a reduction. You get rationalisation. Apple went through this at the time that Steve Jobs went back to Apple and said, look, we don't need 17 products lines, we need 3. And look how successful that was. So anyway, would I buy a red hydrogen phone? Yes.
Why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you? I won't buy one just yet because I'm in an Apple 2-year contract, but that'll give me enough time to work out whether it's a good thing to buy. If I just had a pot of money for geeky purchases, or purchases just because I'm fascinated by this stuff, I'd certainly get it. And there are very few things I think would be a better thing to spend my geek money on. What's the point of 8K when nobody has an 8K TV? There's every point, isn't there? This really is what we were talking about.
Well, exactly. Nobody has an 8K television yet. They will have an 8K television. And when you have an 8K television, you'll want 8K content to play on that television. The same happened with 4K, the same happened with HD. It's just the same thing.
And you'll need a bigger television. You'll need a bigger telly.
You will.
Yeah.
You will.
But that's what's happening with tellies anyway. The second thing to say is, yes, there's a point in it, because when you're shooting at 8K, as we've just seen, everything derived from that will look better because there is more information in the original image.
Everything derived from it will look better, and something you touched upon in an article recently was that technology gets better as a result of it. So if you have an 8K sensor that can do 60 frames a second, well, you're going to have a 4K ability at 120 frames a second. So these things follow on. You'll get better camera capability all round from these sorts of advances. Yeah.
Okay, really great question coming up. This is the last question we'll do. How important is it for cameras to be Netflix approved? And it says, in Africa and India, everyone still watches DVDs. Well, I don't think it's everyone, but I know what you mean. I think Netflix has become the new threshold, the new gateway to greatness, hasn't it?
It has, seemingly, yes. I mean, it's difficult to sort of put my finger on it and say, well, it is very important, because obviously for broadcast, if you're making a television show that you want to be on Netflix, then clearly you need to follow their guidelines. But I think there's this sort of idea, like we used to have. Everyone used to talk about the EBU approval and BBC approval of cameras, even when they weren't going to use those cameras for broadcast. It was a bit of a kudos thing, if I wanted to, I could use my camera to film this.
And one thing I think is very important to say is that this shouldn't discourage anyone, because people make videos at all levels, on all budgets, and so you might think, oh well, the barrier is even higher now. Don't worry about that. If you get commissioned to make a program for Netflix, I think it will follow that you'll have the means to make
You'll be able to have whatever camera you want to use.
Meanwhile, keep doing what you're doing and focus on your craft, and that will increase the likelihood of you being commissioned by Netflix. Anyway, look, thanks for such fantastic questions. Thanks for watching. Thanks very much, Simon. I'm just going to quickly wrap up and say we're going to have the next show in roughly 2 weeks, maybe slightly more. And the reason we're not quite sure is that next Wednesday we're off to Hollywood for Cinegear, which is, we think, one of the most amazing shows all year, because you bump into people and you start conversations with people who, like last year, I bumped into a guy who happened to be the guy that designed the Death Star in the original Star Wars film. Well, that doesn't happen every day, but it does happen several times a day at Cinegear. I can't recommend it enough. Finally, that is RedShark, are having one of our RedShark Connect events. These have turned out to be incredibly popular, and me mentioning it may be redundant because it may be sold out by now. Doesn't cost anything, but we do have to monitor numbers. Do check it out. You'll find articles about it in RedShark, but basically it's at Canon's Burbank studio, and we're going to have people like Canon, G Technology, Zonda Optic, who are the if you like, the US arm of Leica. Fascinating people there. It's at 7 o'clock on Wednesday the 30th, 2 hours after I arrive in Hollywood. So I'll be the zombie propping myself up in the corner eating pizza. So thanks ever so much for watching. Really enjoyed having your company, and we'll see you soon.